I think a team we should talk about now, because it's a team that, listen, barring, like, it'd have to be, as far as I can tell, the most insane miracle where, like, 4 teams have exactly the results possible. Essentially, by the way, the playoffs are set in LEC. Yeah. The 2 teams that mathematically haven't been eliminated is just because mathematically, if those teams lose all their games, the ones above them, and then they win all their games, there's maybe some tiebreaker scenarios. But realistically, it's not looking very likely right now. So one of the teams, basically, who shockingly are going to miss out on the playoffs are the 2-time reigning champions. Mad Lions are in 7th place right now. They are 3 games. There are only 3 games left, by the way. They are 3 games behind the 2 teams above them in the. So again, as I said, you're going to need some like insane fuckery. So at this point in time, functionally, Mad Lions has flunked the split despite being the reigning champions. Now, true, they certainly do not have 2 of the biggest names that they used to have when they were the champion, etc. But I think this is the topic. Right? I'll just open it by saying a slightly mean but maybe funny comment. So redundant, I even explained that. All I'll say is this. Do you know what, Mac? Good news is this, mate. Your general game plan with this team is going to work amazingly, because with no playoffs, no MSI, and maybe no Worlds, there's no chance your players can burn out. You've succeeded, sir. See, it was a little bit mean. It was a good point, but I made it. The delivery was hurtful.
I mean, we knew this was going to happen. Like, Mad Lions couldn't keep getting away with it, right? What they did very well as an org, and to Peter Dunn and their ownership and Mac's credit, was that when no one else was scouting Europe, when everyone else was playing the recycle the washed pro game, they were playing the let's actually scout lower leagues game, and they were able to correctly identify many good players. When they made changes last year, in spite of doing well, most people would have said, and we praise them for this. Most people would have said, let's run back our roster from 2020 and 2021. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Instead, they said, here is our core issue. We need a more vocal early game shot caller. We're all inning on Elyoya, a rookie who had a wonderful season, was probably one of the best rookies that LEC has ever had straight out of the gate. Not only in terms of his individual ability, but because of the effect we knew he was having on the comms of the team. Like, that is very good. Had excellent stage performance, had excellent playoff performance as a rookie.
He looked like the playoff legit, didn't he? He looked even better.
Fucking legit player for sure, right? So they took a risk and said, we're not content being top 3. We want to be top 1. They became top 1. Like, they deserve credit for that. But as more and more teams are actively scouting into the lower leagues of Europe, and it becomes more difficult to get the exact player you want. And also, not every player is going to be an Elyoya. Like, you just have to admit you got lucky that he didn't crumble under pressure as a rookie, that he was able...
Even argue Elyoya's not really Elyoya right now, mate, if you've been watching some of these games. Like,
I don't think Elyoya is... He looks like he's struggling a bit.
I don't think he's their number 1 problem. But, I mean, they don't have the coordination that they used to have. That's for sure. It feels like I don't even realize Reeker's like playing in half the games. That like he just exists, but I never see him. He's like a ghost on the map. So it feels like they lack a lot of coordination and pressure. So I don't know. Like, I think that Mad Lions was due for a bit of a downturn in their performance, because we have to acknowledge that they got unreasonably lucky and that they had a very low amount of competition for the players they were scouting, and both of those things have changed dramatically.
Yeah, and I think that expectations of Mad Lions were you can't realistically set them as title champions 3-4 times back to back with a new roster coming in like this.
They also shouldn't have beaten Rogue. So they have a fraud title, frankly, in my mind.
And yet it's still in their silverware cabinet, so they got away with it. They're happy with it.
It's a KT roster fan. Let's just put that out there as an ambience.
Look, I mean, I recognize that KT's 2014 title was also fraudulent.
They coin flipped their way to a title.
That is true.
Coin flipped like sick. Oh god, it was a great split. That's summer 2014, but
it was probably the greatest split in any region in League of Legends history that was capped by the most fraudulent fucking final.
It was Monty. Logically, Listen, I'm not talking real alchemy. I'm talking like whack anime, full alchemist brotherhood level alchemy, understand? But essentially what they did, Monty, was by exchanging the most fraudulent bullshit split ever against, by the way, one of the best Korean teams ever, they got to win one time, and then all the real KTB teams that should have won never got to ever win. So that's what happens. Don't fuck around with black magic, kids. Don't do it. Won't do it ever.
And they ruined the best split in League of Legends history by doing that. So
don't worry.
KT Arrows.
The only team that people remember from that era is Samsung White. Anyone, we forget about the golden era of OGN, sadly. Yeah, but the thing about the Mad Lions is that I'd heard great things about Unforgiven. He was from everyone that I know in the ERL. Like
he's been doing pretty well.
And actually, I think he's overperformed considering the level that the LEC is and the level of the AD carries that we've typically.
Also, it's a very unique champion pool. Fair play. Seems like a pretty cool guy.
Yeah, and he was coming from the ERLs. He was a big aggressive Draven player and stuff like this. For him to develop and show the poise that he did do, particularly in the first half of the split, was better than I was expecting. Now, Rika was always very streaky, even in Prime League. Now, those streaks when he was like on the hot streak, doing really, really well, he effectively carried his team from like, I don't know, second, third or whatever to like straight to the top through I think the way the Prime League playoffs worked was that it was kind of like a gauntlet system. And he effectively solo killed his way to a title down at that level and then did pretty well in EU Masters on top of that too. Got to the semifinals and took a Carmine Quarter 5 games. But it's a very different level of competition. It's not top of the table LEC. Yes, I think that EU Masters is it's a relevant level of competition when you're looking towards picking up new talent for the LEC. Absolutely, I think we've seen some great ERL players come through that kind of mechanism, but that doesn't remove the fact that he's always been streaky. If you're taking just his results on the very best, you could definitely say that what the hell's this player doing? He's a ghost in the games, and what's his champion pool like? But I think the sad thing is that in this LEC, we've only seen kind of cold streak Rika. I hope that they do put a bit more time into him because I think that he does have potential. Question is, how much are you willing to do that as an org in terms of the process outside of that? I don't think all of these problems lie with Rika. I think the way that they're playing the game is problematic. I think that Armut's struggling. I think that another big thing is that jungle support was where Mad Lions was best. I wouldn't say uncontested. Yeah. I wouldn't say uncontested because I was like, out and out best jungle support duo. But like they were very, very good. I think that was... but now that's not really the case. You've got Rogue, you've got Fnatic, you've got even G2, you've got some good stuff going on with that, right? So even their strongest strength is now like at best like fourth in the region. And that's really problematic when the one person who stood up to be a carry on your team throughout the second half of the split in Elioya can't do enough, and the team isn't really playing a style that supports Elioya popping off. Now, maybe if they'd discovered Hecarim earlier, we'd be having a different conversation. I think that would have been a great pick for them. And actually, the game which they lost against Fnatic, they lost it themselves. And given the fact that, Fnatic do look like the best team in the league right now, them having to lose that game, it shows what could have been with this roster and this split. And it's a little sad that we see it so late. But at the end of the day, it took them a long time to figure out how they wanted to play. And they're reaping the rewards for that.
I want to make a point because there's a lot of coaches watch these shows. In fact, spoiler, even when some of these shows, like some of them are shows that are way lower viewed, there's like sometimes more people in the bully industry watch than the random fans because the joke is the industry people sometimes, they sometimes know like, this is going to be interesting, I might want to hear about this person. Whereas a random player's like, I don't know this guy. So anyway, basically, loads of coaches will definitely watch this thing. So if you want to battle me on this point, just get your points ready and I'll see you on the next episode. Because I'm sick and tired generally. I'm going to do a video on my side channel about this as a general topic. But I'm getting really sick, Monty, of people just basically moving the goalposts when a player isn't a star player. So what's happens, right, is this. We have a discussion about Rika, right? Now, I set it up the way the conversation should be set up. It goes like this. You are the championship team in the league and you had arguably the best player at the most important position mid lane to win that championship, right? When you then make your next team, it has to, just by definition, you have to contrast against the previous team. Sure, you could definitely add in all caveats like we sort of did here, which is you're not essentially the best business though, so you have to sell the players sometimes. If someone offers you a crazy amount, you sell it and you try and reinvest. You try and get a new player. So I understand that, like, realistically, it isn't realistic to say you have to give me the humanoid, the sequel to humanoid, right? Yeah, you're not going to find that. But here's the problem. That is effectively what you are trying to do when you make this next Mad Lions roster. So my problem is this, Nymera. I agree, and loads of coaches have even privately said this to me. They'll say stuff like, yeah, but Rika isn't like, he didn't lose them the game. Yeah, but Rika played it all right. You know, his laning phase was fine. Or, you know what, he played like an okay Rise game. Like, he knows what he's doing. Like, or you know what, give him time as you look at. Here's the problem, though. No, it goes the other way. Here's how I would flip it. I would go, if I was making an LEC team and I asked myself a checklist, what do I need to have the best LEC team? Remember, we were just champions, so I've got to at least try and believe I can win, right? One of the number one on my checklist would be have one of the best mid laners in the league. They have failed. I mean, so it can't now be what then they go, but he's not the worst. He's not the worst. But he plays the most important role. That's the problem. So that is my main issue when we have this discussion. Because essentially, by the way, the same thing happens in Counter-Strike if you watch that ever. People will sometimes do the same thing about a player if he's the AWPer, the sniper, but he's not the worst player on the team. They'll go, but he's not the worst. It's like, bro, that position is the highest resource position in the game by definition. So if you're that player not being the worst, that doesn't even begin to fulfill your qualities there. In theory, just theory, you should be the best. So similarly, right, if you're going to play European League of Legends, you know, in theory, your mid lane doesn't have to be the best. He has to be one of your best players, though. And he almost certainly must be a star player if you're going to win leagues. Like, remember, there's no LEC title where someone, like, just fucking plays Malzahar and wins it. That doesn't happen in Europe, mate. That's some bullshit they do in Asia where they have different players. They can play around other lanes. In Europe, it's mid lane or get fucked. So as a result, like, there's no world where Rico was ever going to pop off like this. The joke is, you look elsewhere in the league, like, there are actually other mid laners that were, like, less likely to have pop offs where it's like, where's this guy? So, unfortunately, like, look, I can sort of see why maybe Mad Lions recruited him. Like, based on what they're saying, it sounds like maybe he has, like, good comms or he has a good mind for the game or he does what the coaches want. But at the end of the day, like, ultimately, it's a performance league. And as I will again repeat, this is the European League of Legends League, mate. Like, in this scenario, it's fuck or walk if you're a mid lane. So I don't care about anything else. Oh, great teammate, great. It's like, I want to do the fucking Alec Baldwin Street. Great, fuck off and have a team meeting, be the assistant coach, then cocksucker. This is mid lane. Win me some lanes, get me some kills, dominate some fucking picks. Do any of these things. Yeah, so, at the moment, like, this guy's just sort of turning up and keeping his head down, trying not to get asked questions, then wait until the fucking bell rings. Like, that ain't enough. I need you on the honor roll, motherfucker, if you want to win.
On a bit of a tangent from this,
crap together. Go on, come on.
A little relevant is that. So when I was coming on for my first week of LEC, I was actually wondering, because this was the point where XL were doing quite poorly. So XL's academy team in the NLC has a mid lane called M&S, and M&S is currently the global solo kill leader. He's got 30 kills.
He's the guy who plays all the assassins, right?
He played Kai'Sa mid lane as a counter to Corki. He's played 14, something like 13 champions, 14 games, had 2.5 solo kills a game. And he's an absolute just crazy guy. So I was wondering if they were actually just going to, like, kick Nuke Dog down, bring this guy in, because at that point you're like, well, okay, at what point do you just kind of pull the plug and say, sweet, just get this person who's really on form in? But I think it's always a difficult decision to make, because actually one of the criticisms that EU's had, and LCS2 actually to a lot of this extent, is that you'll have someone come in and they'll do poorly for like a split or a season, and they just get chucked into the dump, and they're like never seen again. They're never really developed. It's very sink or swim. But I think particularly with a team like Mad Lions, who did so well at cracking the problem which EU had in terms of not just having star power, but having cohesion as a team.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
I wonder if this is kind of a follow-on from them trying to strike gold twice with this and trying to say, look, it might take us a while to work things out, but we think we can work with the pieces because they've seen it work before. It's a very difficult decision. They keep the same roster.
If they manage to do a Misfits basically and keep the same roster like Misfits did last year, and then it does actually blossom in summer, I will absolutely reverse position and give all the coaching credit.
But you have to do it.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
The question's been asked very, very heavily at this point. You have to do it at that point, and that's obviously very difficult for everyone involved. But then you look at like Elyoya, who is playing a very, I'm not going to say like self-serving style, but like he's still playing like the Canyon style of League of Legends, playing like the last couple of years in terms of just like, I'm going to be the carry, I'm going to be like the tip of the spear.
His most played champion is Graves.
Yeah, all this other stuff, right? It fits him, right? It fits him. And then you've got a player like, you've got players like Armor and Rika who are underperforming, particularly Armor, given what we saw from him like last year. Like, as much as he wasn't always going to be the star pop-off player, he had fantastic Gnar performances. He had some great Wukong performances too. Now he's like...
But that's the problem.
What was the Aatrox picks? All of this stuff.
Well, to be fair, To be fair, Ahmed has always been an Aatrox player, right?
Just don't R2 it. Just
look.
don't.
Aatrox blows. Like, we can have that conversation too, because I just sit there and watch. I mean, I just sit there and watch League of Legends around the world and watch Aatrox be useless every fucking game right now. So like, it's stupid. And who knows why people are doing it? But he does technically, Ahmed does have a 79% historic win rate on Aatrox, and it's his 5th most played champ at 19 games. So he has been very good on it.
It's going to go down if he keeps playing it money. That's going to be like 60 next week. So.
It's true. But like, I think if you look at the way that Mad Lions was constructed last year. So here's the big difference, I think, is that with Rogue, they have completely reinvented themselves based on the players that they have had, right? To me, it feels like Mad Lions has not reinvented their play style from last year.
Point, actually.
They iterate on the blueprint, as far as I can tell. If you look at who they get,
So to explain, how did we have to ask ourselves, like, what was great about Mad Lions? It was humanoid. Obviously, was a huge impact on this team. He would play signature champions where he would have immense pressure on the map, like Twisted Fate. And what was Armit's job? Armit's job was basically to play Armit champs in the top lane, which are Gnar, Jace, Wukong, Aatrox, right? And they had a particular style, and I think the comparison between Elyoya and Canyon is astute, because he's playing like Graves, Lee Sin, like these are Canyon champs. And the point is that Armit does Armit things in top lane, and he's going to do well on Armit champs and provide value, but he's not really the focus of the team. The focus of the team is Elyoya and Humanoid and Kaiser exerting massive map pressure alongside Elyoya. Now, when you have a guy who, as far as I can tell, doesn't do anything in the mid lane. He certainly is not the massive like gravity well that's like, drawing people to him, or like, the force, like,
and everything.
Pushing the other team very heavily. Then all of a sudden you have a guy in top lane who's playing Armit champs, which limits what you can do with compositions and limits the way you can play the game. Elyoya can't apply the same pressure without the backup of Humanoid, and Kaiser is with a new guy in the bot lane, and Carzzy, I'm not the biggest Carzzy fan in the universe, but he does play a specific style, and he can be left alone. He's a very self-sufficient weak side AD carry, and that's great in the right roster.
But what you're looking for is a secondary carry, and effectively saying that Armit's not going to do that because of his style, and you've got 2 rookies to choose between with that. So effectively, you kind of struck out, and you're hoping that one of the rookies is going to be an insane rookie.
Right.
And as we've discussed, it's not really ended up like that.
I mean, the whole point of Armor is that he's a distraction. He just wastes your fucking time, and you try and go and gank him 50 times, It's not, as you said,
it's to splash. It's
not just splash. The whole game, exactly, yeah.
So, like, I don't think it's Armit's fault. It's just that Armit had a job.
Team thing. The
philosophy is just flawed right now, and it's like Rogue went from ultimate farm jungle to ultimate gank jungle, but they play around both of those styles. Like, they know the pieces, and it just I literally cannot tell you what Reeker's strengths are. I do not know. But, I mean, can you tell me something? Like, I don't know what they are. I watch his games, and like, I don't know what, like, nothing goes into my brain about Reeker.
I mean, like, it's so weird because you look at his everything from last season, and you think you're looking at a different player, really. He tried to pull out the Aurelia, Renekton mid. A lot of his, melee champions he had been playing on the early season. They just didn't find any success with that. There was that one game against Fnatic where he was, he got solo killed in lane. Yeah, he got one back later, but you're playing Renekton versus Victor. If you're giving up a solo kill to a Victor, his mission failed at that point. So, yeah, as much as it's like difficult for the dude, he's not really had that much to go off of in this split. The question is, what can you develop on there? What are you aiming to go towards with that? Is there an answer in terms of, like, actually maybe Elyoya needs to go towards a more facilitating style, break kind of trend with what he's been doing before? Well, that's quite difficult to do because that seems to be the strong point of the team, but your lanes aren't doing that for you, so you're left at this catch-22 where you need some give from somewhere in the roster, and it's just not there yet. And obviously they're going to have a long, like, mid-season break to try and figure any of that out.
Thing is, if you look at the champions Elyoya players as well, it's like, mate, if he actually had a really good mid laner, he'd be like a fucking MVP candidate again. Like, look at he's played all the ones where he just smashed jungle mid.
Yeah, I mean, I do wonder what would have happened if they picked up Hecarim earlier. I do think that Hecarim is insanely strong right now, and we saw that game versus Fnatic. It allows Elyoya to be the early game farming guy and be the pathing guy to get maximum resources. exert himself onto the map beyond like level 6 and stuff. And we saw that work even against Fnatic, like we were saying, best team in the league currently. But it's too little, it's a little too late. And as much as, he tried a couple of games of Volibear like that beforehand, he's not really stuck to that. And he's not found any success on the Viego really either. So
I think the problem with Volley is like what was so impressive about El Yo-Yo coming out as a rookie was that he was playing Volibear when other people weren't last year. And he was doing, insane like popping out of like raptor pit to dive people under mid lane turret, but that would feed humanoid. And like, it feels like there's a purpose to doing that because you're sacrificing late game strength to pull off some like crazy ganks that he was great at. And like, he's a great Volibear player, but somebody who's not him has to do things with those resources. And it just doesn't feel like that's it. And I'm not saying that Reeker's like actively losing them games because he's just not doing.
He's not the role which the team needs currently. And I mean, I think Unforgiven was that for most of the first part of this split. He was kind of being that kind of, and the meta should absolutely give you the ability to do that through bot lane, but that hasn't been consistent enough. So yeah, I mean, when you say like, how do you triage, how do you fix Mad Lions? It's like, well, I mean, there's a whole dozen different things going wrong with them right now, and it's very difficult to solve at the end of it. As much, and you can have the best coaching staff in the world. It's a really hard problem to contend with because it's kind of the opposite side of the coin to what they found last year in terms of having a roster with everyone on the same page and understanding like the philosophy of the game they want to play. It feels like they just have the opposite of that right now, and you've got players who are pulling in different directions. So it's very hard to deal with.
By the way, since earlier Monty was making that point about how like intuitive Counter-Strike is to watch, here's one of the reasons why you genuinely need to have like 100 million people play League of Legends, or we're never going to ever get those viewership numbers up. But champions like Hecarim are why, mate? Because at the end of the day, if I tune into a Counter-Strike broadcast, I can go like, oh, what's going on here? Like, oh, so what are the teams? Is that going better that way? But I'm already in the game. I can get the concept. Again, I've always thought League was bad for this anyway with all the cutesy champions. But like, if you think of that like arcade Hecarim thing, if I just opened a stream and that champion was on screen, where it's got like fucking, it looks like it has like sunglasses on it, it's got like a guitar or whatever, and it's a horse in metal arms running around, I would just instantly press the X, mate. I'd just close the thing down and go, you know what? What's this Minecraft thing you kids are into? I can vaguely get my head around that. Like, this
I'll take one party point to go. I'm all on that. One day they're gonna release enough horse champions to have like the full Horseman of the Apocalypse comp, and then it's gonna be great. It's gonna be wonderful.
They only have two now, unfortunately. What?
Well, we got
I guess
two,
sort of.
All I'm going to say is if Riot had any balls at all, they'd just make an ivermectin skin.
That's actually great.
Straight fire?
They'd also, Doa and my joke is that Doa and my...
Just be careful now, Mira. Just be careful. That's right. Just smile.
Ivermectin.
There you go. There you go. See, all I'm saying, right, is just fucking stop having your panties in a bunch and let the real creatives have a crack at this.
They'll roll it out on the same patch that they roll out Alt-Rise. That's my...
There you go. There you go.
That's Doa and my joke.
Yes. And the joke is
like Walker like Texas Rengar as well.
Destroys
what mid laner is instead of it being called Realm Warp, his actual ability is he just moves the Overton window. So he just constantly moves the Overton window, and as a result, you never know where you are politically with Alt-Rise. That's the thing. Exactly. It's okay. Right. Anyway, back to talk about things Nightmare can join us on. Where if he wants to appear on LEC broadcasts again, I will reiterate that last part. If he wants to appear on LEC broadcasts. So, right.